Welcome in, everybody. Ready to dive into some fascinating stuff.
Absolutely. Always ready to unpack some history in the making.
Today, we're going to take a look at Kamala Harris's concession speech
I
after that surprise loss to Donald Trump in the 2024 election.
Definitely a result few saw coming. A lot to unpack there.
Our main source material is the transcript from ABC News. They had a special report covering the event.
Great source. They were right in the thick of it that night.
And one thing that really stood out to me right away was the location. Howard University
Interesting choice.
is her alma mater.
Yeah, and she's spoken about how important her time there was, so very symbolic.
Yeah, exactly. So what do you think about that choice for this particular speech?
Well, it wasn't just about nostalgia, I don't think. It was strategic. Howard is a historically black university, tons of history there.
Right. So much tied to activism and black intellectual thought.
Exactly.
So delivering her concession speech there, it's almost like she's connecting with her roots, her base.
Absolutely. Especially in a moment of defeat, it signals that the fight's not over.
That's a really interesting point. And the speech itself, it's like she was walking a tightrope.
Totally agree. Conceding the election, but also rallying the troops at the same time.
Yeah, keeping the momentum going.
A tough balance to strike, but she managed to pull it off.
I was looking for a quote that really captures that, and I think this one does. She said, "While I concede this election, I do not concede the fight that fueled this campaign."
Perfect example.
It's acknowledging the outcome, but also emphasizing that the fight goes on.
Right. Those core issues and causes she was pushing for, they're not going away.
And it's especially interesting considering how critical she's been of Trump in the past.
Oh, absolutely.
But here she is, calling for a peaceful transfer of power.
That's huge. It says a lot about her commitment to democratic principles, putting the country first.
Definitely makes you think back to other concession speeches. Gore in 2000, McCain in 2008.
Right. Those moments where, despite the disappointment and the deep divisions, they put stability first.
It's a powerful tradition, and she's upholding it. Okay, so got to talk about the crowd's reaction.
Oh, yeah, that was hard to watch.
ABC's report really highlighted the tears and shock, especially among the younger people there.
Understandably so. This generation saw her break barriers, and now they're facing this huge letdown.
Yeah, it's tough.
But she addressed them directly,
I noticed that.
acknowledged their pain, offered comfort and encouragement.
It was almost like passing the torch, inspiring them to keep fighting even when it's hard.
Definitely felt that way. A message of resilience.
Okay, so let's zoom out a bit.
Bigger picture time.
This election, Trump actually won both the Electoral College and the popular vote.
Which is significant. Not just a win, but a win by a large margin.
Right. Didn't just squeak by.
Exactly. So what does that tell us about where we are politically right now?
Well, first we got to remember, the Electoral College, each state gets a certain number of votes based on population.
And a candidate needs a majority of those to win the presidency. Right, and sometimes a candidate can win the popular vote, meaning more individual votes across the country, but still lose the electoral college.
Like in 2016.
Exactly. So the fact that Trump won both this time, it points to a consolidation of his support.
A stronger base than before.
And he flipped some key states that were previously leaning Democrat, so this isn't just a win, it's a mandate.
Wow, that's pretty powerful. And adding to all of this, we now have a Republican-controlled Senate.
Yeah, throws another wrench into things.
What do you think the implications are, especially for the things Harris championed during her campaign?
Well, the Senate, they have a ton of power in policymaking.
Right, one of the two houses of Congress.
So with a Republican majority there, it'll be much harder to get anything passed that aligns with Harris's more progressive agenda.
Like the environmental regulations and expanding healthcare access she was pushing for.
Yeah, those are likely to face major roadblocks now.
That's a tough pill to swallow for her supporters. And to top it all off, the situation with the House of Representatives is still up in the air.
Lots of uncertainty there.
What happens if the Democrats manage to hold on to their majority, even if it's slim?
Then we're looking at a divided government.
And what does that actually mean in practical terms?
It means that to get anything done, both parties will have to compromise and negotiate.
Which is a tall order considering how divided things are right now.
No doubt. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Definitely a lot to keep an eye on. Thanks for breaking that down.
Of course. Always happy to dive in.
So we've really been focusing on the immediate political realities, the shift in power, the divided government.
Right, all the nuts and bolts.
But I think it's crucial to step back even further.
Yeah, get a little perspective.
Look at the historical context. Where does this fit in the grand scheme of things?
Exactly, because this isn't just about one election. This result, it could be a turning point in American politics, maybe even on par with some of those major historical shifts.
Like what? What are you thinking of?
Well, think about the 1932 election. FDR and the New Deal completely reshaped the role of government.
Right, a huge shift.
Or the Reagan Revolution in 1980, ushering in an era of conservatism.
So you're putting Trump's win on that same level.
It's too soon to say definitively, of course, but there are some parallels, Those elections, they reflected deep shifts in the country's mood.
Its identity, even.
Absolutely. And this election, it could be marking a similar turning point.
Wow, that's a pretty bold statement. So if those past elections were driven by major social shifts, what's happening now? What's driving this one?
It's always complex, a bunch of factors all coming together, but there's been this simmering economic anxiety for a while now, people feeling left behind.
Yeah, the globalized economy, not everyone's benefited equally.
And then you have the cultural divisions. They've been widening for years.
Fueled by social media, everyone in their own echo chambers.
And this distrust in traditional institutions, it's all a recipe for this kind of moment.
It really does feel like a perfect storm, all these social and political forces colliding. How do we even begin to untangle it all?
Well, one way to start is by looking at how the media covered the election.
Oh, that's interesting.
What narratives were they pushing? How did they frame the issues?
Because they played a huge role in shaping our perception, even if we don't realize it.
Absolutely. It's about power. Who has it and who's using it?
Right. It's so easy to get caught up in those headlines and not stop to think about what's being left out or the spin being put on things.
Exactly. And were there certain voices that were amplified or ignored completely? Did the media even unintentionally contribute to this polarized environment?
So many questions to consider.
And then there's the elephant in the room, social media.
Oh, yeah. Can't forget about that.
It's undeniably a force in shaping public opinion, maybe even more so than traditional media this time around.
So many people get their news from social media now.
But it's also a breeding ground for misinformation, those echo chambers where you only see what confirms your beliefs.
It's scary. How do we even navigate this new information landscape and tell what's real?
It's the million-dollar question, and honestly, no easy answer. It takes conscious effort, developing critical thinking skills, media literacy, healthy skepticism.
Question everything. Check your sources.
Be aware of your own biases. It's a lot of work.
We need a whole new toolkit for dealing with information in this digital age. But for now, let's shift gears a bit. What about the voters themselves?
Yeah, how did they react to all of this?
What did those different reactions tell us?
Well, it was a microcosm of the divisions we've been talking about. You had elation from Trump supporters, a sense of vindication.
Makes sense. They feel like their guy won.
But then on the other side, Harris's supporters, deep disappointment, concern, even fear.
Yeah, especially for those who felt particularly vulnerable under the previous Trump administration.
Their anger, their sense of betrayal, it's all valid.
And then you have those in the middle, not diehard fans of either candidate, just a lot of uncertainty.
It's like the whole country's holding its breath.
Waiting to see what happens next.
Exactly, a mix of anticipation and anxiety.
So all of this paints a pretty bleak picture.
Yeah, I'm not going to sugarcoat it.
How do we even begin to bridge these divides?
It won't be easy. It demands empathy,
Being able to see things from another person's perspective?
Listening to and understanding viewpoints that are different from our own.
That's tough, especially these days.
We can't just retreat into our echo chambers and ignore everyone we disagree with.
Gotta start recognizing the humanity in each other.
I might have different political views, but we probably share a lot of the same hopes and fears.
It reminds me of something Harris said in her speech. We all have so much more in common than what separates us.
That's a good one. A reminder that even in our differences, there's common ground.
There's hope.
Yeah, but hope without action is just wishful thinking.
We have to stay engaged, hold our leaders accountable.
Keep fighting for the things we believe in.
This isn't a time to sit back and just watch it all unfold.
You have a voice, you have agency, use it.
This goes beyond politics.
It's about who we are as a society, what we value.
This election, it exposed the cracks in our foundation.
Forced us to confront some uncomfortable truths.
It's like looking in the mirror and not liking what you see.
It's painful but necessary.
So where do we go from here? What does healing look like?
It's a journey, not a destination. A continuous process of listening, understanding, working together.
To build a more just and equitable society.
For everyone.
This election, it wasn't just about choosing a president.
It was about defining who we are, who we want to be.
What kind of future we want to create for ourselves and for future generations.
It's about the future of American democracy.
And that conversation, that struggle, It doesn't end when the votes are counted.
It's just the beginning.
That's what makes it so important to stay informed, stay engaged, and never stop pushing for a better tomorrow.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
We've really dug deep into some heavy stuff in this part of our deep dive. Okay, so we've been super focused on the U.S. so far, but I'm thinking about the global impact, America's political landscape going through such a big shift. It's got to send ripples throughout the world. We're not exactly an isolated island.
Oh, definitely. It's like dropping a stone in a pond, those ripples spread out. And a change in leadership here, especially someone like Trump, who's known for his unconventional approach to foreign policy. It's bound to make waves internationally.
Yeah, no kidding. I wouldn't want to be in those war rooms right now figuring out what to do. World leaders have to be scrambling, trying to figure out what this means for them. What do you think your main concerns are?
Well, for our allies in Europe and Asia, there's probably a lot of apprehension. Trump's been skeptical of international alliances in the past.
That America first rhetoric.
Exactly, and they're used to a certain level of predictability and stability in their relationship with the U.S.
Which is all kind of up in the air now.
So yeah, I imagine there are a lot of diplomatic cables flying around right now.
Emergency strategy sessions.
Oh, for sure.
What about the other side of the coin? Countries that haven't always seen eye to eye with the U.S., like Russia or China, are they celebrating?
It's not that straightforward. While they might see this as an opportunity, to push their own agendas, they're also wary of Trump's unpredictability. He doesn't always play by the usual rules.
Which can make him a tough opponent to deal with.
Absolutely. It's a high-stakes game, and everyone's trying to figure out their next move.
So it's not just America holding its breath. The whole world's kind of on edge.
It's a global story, no doubt about it.
Okay, so we've gone from the very personal, Harris's speech, the reactions of her supporters, to the big picture, the global implications, my head's spinning.
That's what these moments in history do, force you to zoom out and see how everything's connected.
But before we wrap up, got to touch on one more thing. The role of technology. It feels like this election was really shaped by that digital landscape.
Oh, absolutely. Social media, algorithms, those echo chambers we talked about, they all played a huge role in shaping the narrative, amplifying those divisions, and influencing voters.
It makes you think about the power of these tech giants.
Yeah.
Are they shaping our democracy or just reflecting it?
And are they accountable for what spreads on their platforms? Those are questions we'll be debating for years to come.
It feels like uncharted territory, politically and technologically, both exciting and kind of scary. We've got these incredibly powerful tools, but are we using them responsibly, ethically?
Those are the right questions to be asking. I don't have all the answers, but I do know that the first step is awareness. Pay attention to how technology is shaping your worldview, how you consume information, how you make decisions.
Especially political choices.
Be more critical of what you see online, verify your sources, look for different perspectives.
It's about digital literacy, critical thinking skills for the age of algorithms.
Exactly. We need to be more savvy consumers of information, and we need to demand more accountability from those tech companies. They have a lot of power.
We can't just let them dictate the terms of our digital lives, especially when it comes to something as important as democracy. Well, we've covered a ton of ground in this deep dive. We analyzed Harris's concession speech, looked at the political landscape, the historical context, the global and technological implications.
And we've only just scratched the surface.
This is just the beginning of what's likely to be a pretty wild chapter in history.
It's daunting, but also exhilarating.
Definitely a mix of emotions.
We face huge challenges, but that also means there are incredible opportunities. And it all comes down to individual choices, How will each of us choose to engage? What will we contribute? What kind of future will we build together?
A lot to think about. As we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with this. This election exposed so much about where we are as a country, the state of our democracy. So ask yourself, what role will you play in shaping its future?
Think about it, grapple with it, and most importantly, act on it. We're all writing this story together.
That's a great note to end on. Thanks for joining me for this deep dive.
My pleasure. Always a good conversation.